The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Golenbock University. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and the three Mashuganas are in place. Three baseball Mashuganas. Let's put it that way. We're not just Mashuganas. We're special Mashuganas. Alan Blumkin is here. Hello, Al.
Hello. Hi, Ralph. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Alan.
And the Professor Peter Golenbock. How you doing, guys? Everything's
very, very well.
Honky-dory on this end. I'm excited. We're going to talk about the Hall of Fame ballot that was recently, Baseball Hall of Fame ballot recently released. And I want your first impression, Peter Golenbock.
Well, it's time for us to put Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens in. And after doing that, there are about 7 really terrific baseball players who deserve to be put into the Hall of Fame. And what's interesting is that none of the rest of them are Yankees or Red Sox or Mets. They play for other interesting teams. Vlad Guerrero, for instance, somebody who should be in the Hall of Fame. Larry Walker, who was with Colorado, marvelous ball player. He should be in. There are, let's see, the great relief pitcher.
Trevor Hoffman.
Yes,
Hoffman.
Trevor Hoffman.
And Guerrero just missed last year.
Yeah.
And I think they're pretty much odds on to make it this year. I would like to see Larry Walker. Larry Walker was very solid. He gets a bad rap because of the park that he played in. Not at all his fault.
Right.
You know.
And he sort of has the same problem that Biggio and Bagwell had, which is to say they were great players who played in places where nobody ever watched them play. And
right.
Larry Walker's sort of the same thing. They were not in a highly visible town. He was in mostly Colorado.
Chipper Jones is on the ballot this year.
Chipper Jones is another,
Yeah, he's a jackass, but he's on the ballot.
But he's certainly deserving.
Yeah.
Very deserving ball player for the Atlanta Braves. And the greatest designator hitter who ever lived, Edgar Martinez. And I would argue that Edgar belongs in the Hall of Fame as well for his non-Parel hitting in a very, very difficult job. Being a DH is not something everybody can do. You
sit around an awful lot.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of mental thing that goes with it. And,
without a doubt. You have to go up there ready to hit, even though you haven't been involved in the game at all. And Edgar was the very best. He really was.
Before they put that rule in, there were players who could have extended their careers quite a bit if all they had to do was DH.
No question. No question. I'm one of those American League guys who argues wholly in favor of the DH. I think it makes for a much more interesting game rather than having the number 8 hitter, a poor hitting shortstop, and the number 9 hitter, the pitcher, who was then either bunting or striking out. In the American League, we have hitters, people who can actually hit.
But it puts the pitchers, it really taints it for the pitchers because they're facing almost the top of the order all the way through.
Yep, but what's fair for one is fair for everybody else. The guy on the other team has got the same problem. So
right, but the guy in the other league doesn't have the same problem, and where, for instance,
nobody cares. Nobody cares about the guy in the other league until the World Series rolls around. Nobody cares about the other league. It doesn't matter, which is what I've always found so interesting because my National League fans really despise the DH because they're the Brooklyn Dodgers,
I don't despise
New York
it.
Giants.
I understand it. And I almost the change when you watch an American League game and a National League game. It's interesting.
Yes.
From that standpoint,
mm-hmm.
but it forces the National League team to change their roster, their playoff roster.
Well, it forces the World Series and in the interleague games when it's played in the National League Park, the American League pitchers have to bat.
They do.
Okay, which they never do most of the time.
But pitchers hit 112 anyway. So what difference does it make? An American League pitcher can make an out just as easily as a National League pitcher. What difference does it make? Don Newcomb was a great hitter, and there were maybe 2 or 3 other pitchers who could actually hit.
One of them was Bob Lemon, the Hall of Fame pitcher.
He came up as an outfielder.
Right.
Bob Lemon didn't have the DH. Bob Lemon was in an era before the DH.
Spahn was also a very good hitter. Warren Spahn was a very good hitter.
Yeah.
The best one ever probably was Red Ruffin.
Best one ever was actually Smokey Joe Wood.
Well, he was,
Smokey Joe Wood
blew his arm out.
Game.
Well, the ones who pitched a very long time, Red Ruffin was probably the best of that. Best of them.
And don't forget, there was a
Babe
guy
Ruth.
named Babe who played for Boston. He was a pretty good hitter, too.
Yeah.
No two ways about it.
Not bad. As a matter of fact,
George Sisler came up as a pitcher.
Oh.
He came up as a pitcher. That didn't last very long either.
That's why when you talk about who was the greatest player in the game, and I'm one of those who would argue that Barry Bonds was the greatest player in the game. But then you go to the book and you look up Babe Ruth's pitching record, which was something like 92-30.
Yeah, 90, I think it was 90, something like 92-46.
Yeah.
He led the ERA, league in the ERA, in 1916. He
right.
He
in the
was,
World Series, he pitched how many shutouts
29
in a row?
2/3 scoreless, yeah.
That's just it's just breathtaking and so you then have to admit to yourself that Babe Ruth was the greatest baseball player.
Yeah, he won a 2-1 complete game in 14 innings in the 1916 World Series, which is still the longest game by innings in World Series history.
I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah. If nothing would have happened to him, he would have won 300 games as a pitcher.
Absolutely. No two ways about it. He would have been up there with Mathewson and Walter Johnson and Grover Cleveland Alexander. There's no two ways about it. Absolutely right.
Plus, he was a left-handed pitcher, too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Tremendous advantage from that standpoint.
Sure. He and Koufax, the 2 greatest lefty pitchers of all time. He, Koufax, and Lefty Grove.
You can throw Warren Spahn in there.
And Warren Spahn you certainly can throw in as well.
Yeah.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Now, there are a couple more names.
Doesn't get a lot of publicity, but he comes up
Who's this?
big numbers-wise.
Who are you talking about?
Lefty Grove doesn't get a lot of publicity, and it's one of the greats.
Grove won the ERA title 9 times. And he had 2 years in 30 and 31 when everybody was hitting 300. His numbers were so much better than the league average. It wasn't even funny.
Sure.
He was having 2-something ERAs when the whole rest of the league was having 4-something.
Yep.
Wow.
And
that's how you compare true greatness, like a Gretzky, for instance, where the stats are so skewed. Like Koufax's streak, those 5-6 years, his stats were absolutely incredible compared to the rest of the league.
The couple of best years ever, believe it or not, was Pedro Martinez.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. Pedro is a Hall of Famer for sure.
He's in, he's in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, his career wasn't as long as a lot of people, but
no.
Yeah.
No.
When he was at the top of his game, he was almost unhittable.
Okay, I'm going to ask you guys 2 pitchers, Schilling and Morris.
Schilling and Morris, and there are a couple others too.
Messina.
Messina. Don't forget Messina.
Somebody put down that Messina is one of the greatest on Facebook. Messina is one of the greatest pitchers in history, which I thought was ridiculous.
Well, not one of the greatest pitchers in history, but I just know that whenever Messina pitched against the Yankees, when I was watching him pitch, he was one tough cookie to beat. You know,
Look, he won 270 games. He won 20 games in his last season. He would have hung around a couple of extra years. He would have gotten to 300. It'd be a no-brainer.
No, it's still a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think he belongs, but I don't think, he's, we're better than, Jim Cott, who I think belongs.
Cott belongs too. So does Morris. Morris belongs too. I don't know. See, Morris was a guy people didn't like.
Yeah, there's reasons for that.
Didn't like him.
There are reasons for people not liking him.
Al? What were those reasons?
Okay, first of all, when he was caught up in the collusion, when the owners colluded and they forced him to go back to the Tigers.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, he compared himself to Jackie Robinson.
Oh.
Okay, which is on the face of it absurd. And then and he went to Minnesota after he left the Tigers. He helped them win the World Series. He was so happy to be home because he was from there. Blah 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 blah. And 2 seconds after the series ended, he files for free agency and goes to Toronto. Those two things really ticked a lot of people off about him.
Well, he has a lot in common with Schilling, who has made some statements.
Schilling is the only person ever to talk his way out.
That's true. Well, Schilling is a far right-wing nut job.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I mean, he's had announcing jobs, which last about 5 minutes because he can't keep his yap shut.
Yeah, rally in Massachusetts that drew about 10 people.
I know, but let me tell you what. This guy was a champion. He took teams to the World Series. He took Arizona to the championship. He took Philadelphia to the championship. He took Boston. Schilling, absolutely. Despite what you may think of him as a human being, he is.
Was that blood on his Sanny?
Bloody sock. Blood on his sock. Absolutely. I've got the bobblehead that's got blood on its sock. Yeah, sitting right here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've got the whole 2004 Red Sox team sitting right in front of me, holding their trophies. And Schilling's got a.
I talked to one of the coaches of that Red Sox team. I wonder if he's on there as a bobblehead. Ron Papa Jackson.
Ron Jackson.
Did they make bobbleheads of the coaches on that team?
No, they didn't.
Probably not.
No.
But
they did.
A longtime infielder, Minnesota, and what have you. And Lenny Randle, our mutual friend, brought him on the Lenny Randle show a week or so ago.
Very nice.
Do you think? Omar Vizquel is a candidate.
Omar Vizquel is the best shortstop of the last, 30 years.
Yeah, and Jim Thome.
And Thome? How many home runs he had?
612, I think it was, something like that.
He's first ballot shoo-in. Thome.
Oh, you would think, but again, we could go on naming the names, and they're only going to take. You could, as a writer, you could only vote for 10, even if you. The way it's set up at this point.
So that tells you people like Larry Walker and people like the closer is going to have
Trevor Hoffman.
Trevor Hoffman's going to have a little less shot at it than the obvious big name.
One writer said
Trevor Hoffman came very close last year, I think.
One writer said he did not vote for Chipper Jones because Chipper Jones believes that the Sandy Hook massacre was a hoax.
Who cares what Chipper Jones?
Yeah.
It's just.
But one writer already has said his position that he's not voting for Chipper Jones because of that.
I mean, who is like?
Because he fails the character.
Steve Carlton believes the world is coming to an end.
I know that.
Montana in a bunker, waiting for the government to come and take his rights away.
Yeah.
He's still one of the greatest left-handed pitchers who ever lived, for crying out loud. I mean, I don't care what Chipper Jones believes in terms of who shot whom and whatever. That guy could
And
play.
let's talk about that character test that you just mentioned, Al. How many of the current Hall of Famers, if you want to look at their total characters, would be in the Hall of Fame at this point?
Wow.
And how subjective that is. as a rule. But
in most cases, listen, Ralph. In most cases, it's not an issue. In most cases, character is not an issue. Guys come up, they play, they retire. And there's nothing terribly controversial about them. That is for most guys. There are maybe 6 guys, and I can probably name them, who have this controversy about them. Obviously, Shoeless Joe Jackson is one of these guys because he was one of the Black Sox accused of throwing the 1919 World Series. Pete Rose is the second one because he's been accused of betting baseball while he was a manager of the Cincinnati Reds. Now, my argument with Rose is that while he was a player, he did nothing wrong. Played for 24 years, got 200 hits in each of those 24 years, and certainly belongs in baseball's Hall of Fame as a player. So that's my argument for him. And then you've got people like Kennesaw Mountain Landis, who was our first baseball commissioner, who from 1920 to his death in 1944 did everything in his power to keep baseball segregated. No African Americans were allowed to play baseball, even though he knew full well that there were plenty capable of being big league ball players. Now,
what about Morgan Bulkley, who's a figurehead president of the National League in 1876?
Yep.
And went in 1937, and
yep.
He was a senator and governor of Connecticut, I think. But the guy just didn't do anything. William Hulbert, who took 100 years to put in, who was a real founder of the National League, took over, and that Buckley was out of it as fast as he was in it.
Well, there are a whole bunch of characters like that.
Hey, the Bowie Kuhns and the Pud.
You got Bowie Kuhn.
Are in.
You got Tommy Yorkie.
O'Malley is in.
Tommy Yorkie was another racist.
Tommy Yorkie is my favorite.
Yeah.
I get crazy. Yeah, they put him in. It took them 100 years to put Jacob Rupp in.
That's right. I mean, what in the world did Yorkie do that
He probably contributed a lot of money.
Well, I don't know.
It's like when they put Jerry Jones in the Football Hall of Fame this past August.
Yeah. Well, they're going to put Steinbrenner in too. I mean, there's an argument about Steinbrenner.
I know, yeah.
In the Hall of Fame. And, of course, had he not been suspended twice, he would have had the Yankees for 30 years and never won a single pennant.
Yeah.
Because it is nutty.
Miller is out and Bowie Kuhn is in.
Yes. Well, that is, without a doubt, one of the strangest, dumbest ironies of the baseball.
The combination of that really leads you to believe it's all either a popularity contest or bribes or
No, it's who's writing
bribes.
Writing history. And Ralph, again, it's the politics of the conservatives versus the liberals. You're back to that again. The Baseball Hall of Fame is a very conservative place.
Right.
Marvin Miller was a very liberal, sort of New York, Jewish, troublemaker, commie, all of those things, who made it so that all of these baseball players could make this fabulous living at the expense of the millionaires. And that's just not very popular in conservative circles. The fellow who runs the Hall of Fame right now, Edelson. Now, I could be wrong about this, but I had heard that he had worked in some capacity for George W. Bush.
Really?
That's what I had heard. Now, again, I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I apologize for that. But I understand that he was involved somehow in conservative politics.
George Bush has a tremendous reputation in baseball.
Absolutely.
He was up for commissioner at one time.
He was. I know. So was Nixon. Nixon wanted to be commissioner too.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen. So it's there's some politicians who really love the game, and George W. and Richard Nixon were two of them. But again, I'm telling you, it's a conservative versus a liberal thinking. which is why, for instance, the Arizona, Philadelphia, Boston pitcher, who is this, incredible right-wing conservative. Nobody has a problem with his right-wing conservatism, I don't think. It would not surprise me to see him get elected this year, which would be
perfect. But it's more than that. You could be a right-wing and conservative, and half of the country is. But if you're so far polarized, like Schilling seems to be, where you get fired over your remarks, you're going to make some enemies in the press.
That could be. That could be. That could be. If I'm correct, what they have been doing is weaning the old voters out and bringing new voters in. I think that's what they've been doing, from what I understand. And if that's the case, I imagine the new people don't even know what it was that Schilling did. You look at his numbers, you look at his postseason numbers, and you say to yourself, this guy was a winner. And you vote him in.
Right. Well, one of the things that nailed him was that the fact that after the Adam Jones incident in Boston last season with the racial epithets that were being thrown at him from the Fenway Park stands, Schilling came out in defense of it.
Yeah, well, look who's president.
In defense of...
Well, that's a whole other issue altogether.
Yeah, I know.
Every morning I wake up and I hope that he's not president anymore. I go to bed hoping when I wake up he won't be president anymore, and every day he is.
I know.
Well, you might say when you wake up and Pence is president, it might not be much better. Be a little less scary, let's put it that way. But he's a very, very well-organized politician who can get stuff through where pretty much Trump has been all bluster when it comes to Obamacare. He hasn't been able to replace it. He's more talk, and I think Pence is, the politician that could hurt the liberal.
Let's get off this. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's go back to baseball.
All right. To wrap it up, let me ask you both. What are you reading right now, Peter? What book are you reading, or books?
I just finished reading the biography of Harry Belafonte, and I'm about. I read a really terrific book, The Last Good Year. The Last Good Season, I think it's called.
Yeah, about the 1956 Dodgers. Yeah, I read that.
1956 Dodgers.
Yeah, I read that a couple of years ago. Yeah.
I enjoyed the heck out of that book. I think Michael did a spectacular job doing the research. He was perhaps a tiny bit too kind to Walter O'Malley, but nevertheless, his arguments were very, very interesting with respect to, why O'Malley left Brooklyn and went to Los Angeles. I mean, the bottom line is they gave him 300 acres of land to build his ballpark, and
somebody on Facebook and one of the Brooklyn Dodgers sites that I'm on put the picture of somebody standing in front of Walter O'Malley's plaque in Cooperstown with his middle finger raised.
Yeah, well,
guy's middle finger raised. Yeah.
Sure. I mean that's how 99.9% of Brooklyn Dodger fans feel. But the Los Angeles fans
the book that you're reading about Belafonte,
yeah.
Does it mention the week that he basically programmed late night TV on ABC?
It talks about it.
I think that was the most important advance for black entertainers in our time.
People don't understand what an important personage he was in the civil rights movement. He was a very close friend of Martin Luther King's. He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars financing the Freedom Riders as they got on those buses and went south.
Right.
He spent a lot of his own money doing things that ended up changing the country. And he's just such a marvelous person, and it was so interesting to read about his life.
I remember as a kid going to the 96th Street Jewish Y.
92nd Street.
And Harry Belafonte and his kids used to attend. And he was the most down-to-earth guy.
Yep.
It was at the time when that Calypso thing was going big, and he could have big-leagued any celebrity, any kid wanting to just say hello to him, but he didn't. He's a mensch, a human being.
Absolutely.
Alan, what are you reading?
Okay, I'm reading a book called it's called Madness by the Hour. It's a history of Charleston, South Carolina, from the time of Lincoln's election in 1860 until the Civil War started at Fort Sumter.
Wow!
And how they fed the powers that be, just feeding and screaming about all these things of the secession. And saying, basically deceiving themselves, and that they could possibly win a war. And I finished a book about a month ago called Architects of Disunion. And what happened, and that was this, after South Carolina and Mississippi seceded, they sent commissioners they appointed commissioners, sent them to the other southern states to encourage them to leave the Union, and the whole thing was based on race.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fear of the black person. So essentially, the myth that they were fighting for states' rights was a crock.
Of course.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
And another one I'm reading now is also on the making. It's a full book on the making of Citizen Kane.
Oh, I read that book. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful book. I'm also reading a book called Double Cross, which is by Sam Giancana's brother, Chuck. It says it's by Sam and Chuck Giancana, which is interesting because Sam obviously was murdered. But Sam apparently told Chuck tremendous amount of information about his life. And this is the fella who basically what he said was that Joseph P. Kennedy, John and Bobby's father, promised him, Giancana, that if Giancana would help his son become the president, which he did, getting votes in both West Virginia and Chicago, that the brothers would leave the mafia alone. The only problem with that is that Joe Kennedy didn't tell Bobby that. And so as soon as John was elected president, Bobby became the attorney general, and he went after Jimmy Hoffa. And it got so bad, according to Chuck Giancana, that the first thing they did was that they put they took Marilyn Monroe and they gave her some sort of poisoned enema. And that wasn't supposed to kill her. It was just supposed to make her very ill and give a warning to the Kennedys of what might happen if they didn't start playing ball with the mob. And unfortunately, Marilyn ended up dying from that, according to Chuck.
Wow.
And then the next thing that happened, of course, was that Chuck arranged with gunmen who was not, what's his name, to shoot Kennedy. It wasn't Lee Oswald who killed Kennedy. It was Sam Giancana's two men. And then, again, he getting back at Joe Kennedy, he killed Bobby as well. It's a very, very interesting book. And you read the Warren Report, and then you read Sam and Chuck Giancana's, book, and these are two diametrically opposite retellings of events.
Oh, when I was working
I tend to believe the mob, which has always had more integrity than the government over the years.
I know. I agree.
It's also the only organization where there's accountability.
Yes. Yep, I know.
And
so that's the deal.
Yeah, one quick funny story. When I was working for the Transit Authority, my boss, we used to handle a lot of records and stuff. my boss used to get, who I'm still friendly with to this day, used to get calls from Barry Feinstein, who was on from the Teamsters Union, who was on the MTA board, for all sorts of stuff. And one time it just became, like they were calling every 5 minutes. I told my boss, I said, next time he calls, tell him, says, you're too busy now, and tell him to go find Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you work for the Transit Authority?
I used to.
Did you know Lois Tendler by any chance?
No.
Lois was in charge of the PR for the Transit Authority.
Did you know David Nisnowitz?
No, I didn't. No, I was in the operating budget.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, I know all the numbers. I know they're wasting everything, and they had a huge public liability budget, which was the fund they used to pay off lawsuits.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
We'll have a show.
I want to give everybody a heads up, and you guys a heads up. Next week, Tony Castro is going to join us.
Oh, what a wonderful writer he is. Fantastic.
Absolutely. He's been on with us before, and
the magic
he wrote that magical book, The Madge and the Mick. Fabulous, fabulous book. I just was in love with that book.
They didn't get along very well. The Madge didn't get along with anybody.
That's not what Tony says. I mean, that's one of the highlights of Tony's book. He says.
Well, I was at a baseball writers' dinner years ago. Yep. We used to put a table together from my office before it just got completely priced out of hand. And one time, Mantle and Ford were sitting next to each other. DiMaggio walks in, and he was in town doing a card show.
Yep.
He walks in, and Mickey, of course, had a few libations. I said, "Hey, Whitey, Joe just walked in. He's wearing that same sports coat I think he wore when I came up to the Yankees in 1951." Now, you know how DiMaggio was about stuff like that, and I don't think.
Yeah, the argument was that when Mickey came up, that DiMaggio gave him the cold shoulder, and the focus of Tony's book was that in his research he found out that at least during the first, that year in '51 when it was Joe's last year and Mickey's first year, that there was no enmity there, at least then. I think after a while, when Joe DiMaggio, for instance, demanded that the Yankees have him introduced last at
I know on Mickey Mantle Day.
I
was in the.
Mantle was so classy about that too.
He didn't care.
Stood there and gave a 5-minute speech to Joe on his day.
Yeah.
No, Mickey didn't care. And Joe was something of a prick. There's no two ways about it. And I suspect, Whitey, who's very smart, and has a rapier wit. I can just see him saying, something like that. Here's Joe, and he's wearing the same suit that he wore when.
Mantle said that. Yeah.
Mantle said that.
I said it to Whitey. Yeah.
Mickey had a rapier wit too. So.
Yeah, but the thing is also, what's very interesting also to me is how the public perceptions of Joe DiMaggio and Ted Williams changed over the years.
That's true. Well, Ted. I know Ted. I've known Ted. Ted changed over the years. Ted really had no interest in PR.
No, he got screwed out of at least 2 MVP awards.
Oh, at least 2 MVPs, and the writers hated him.
I know that, especially a drunk Dave Egan.
Egan, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And there was another guy who hated him too. The two of them hated him, and as a result, they wrote terrible things about him, and it caused the public to boo him some.
Yeah, Egan also vilified Casey Stengel quite a bit when he was managing the Boston Braves, and then when he was hired by the Yankees, I was doing research on this a while back.
Yeah.
That he said the only thing they're going to get out of Stengel was laughs and no pennants.
Yeah, well, he was wrong about that.
He was wrong about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
He was wrong about that. But Ted after a while began to see how much he was loved, and really sort of warmed up to that. I mean, I went to several gatherings of Society of American Baseball Research in Florida, where we joined Ted and listened to him talk, and he was just. I mean, I love the guy.
I thought that when that Fenway Park All-Star Game thing, when they wheeled him out and all the players gathered around him, I thought that was incredibly incredibly moving.
It took people a while to just appreciate what a spectacular ball player this guy was. Yeah, I think if he had not been in the armed
5 years,
all
yeah.
those years, he might have
lost
had
five.
more home
he lost
runs.
5 years.
Yeah, might have had more home runs than Hank Aaron had. But the guy hit 401.
He had 388 at age 39.
That's right.
1957. Which he had absolutely no speed. If he would have had any speed, he would have hit 400 that year.
And what a presence! What a presence he was.
Oh.
And Lenny Randall will tell you what a wonderful instructor and a mentor he was to players.
That's right.
He gets a lot of bad press because they say superstars can't communicate, this, that, and the other thing. And if you listen to Lenny for his 3 hours on TED every now and again, you can appreciate that he was not like that. And he would instruct players. He'd take them out on fishing trips and show them the power, the benefits of strong hands, and how bringing in a fish, you want to lay off the early fishes that you get, and you wait for that one fish. Everything was equated to baseball from fishing. How do you hold the pole? How do you strengthen
isn't that fabulous?
Your wrists and what have you?
Yeah.
He was a Renaissance man, but with the craziest family stuff going on towards the end of his life with his kid and what to do with his remains.
Joe DiMaggio had the same thing with his kid.
Yeah.
Joe DiMaggio's kid went to Yale. And in the last few years of Joe DiMaggio's kid's life, he was a homeless man who lived in the back end of a semi-trailer.
We're talking Joe DiMaggio Jr., everybody.
Joe DiMaggio Jr., yeah. Born in 1946, if I'm not mistaken. Just strangest thing. And, of course, with Ted Williams' kid, decided he was going to get rich himself by having Ted sign autographs. And he would spend the great majority of the day shoving stuff under Ted's hands for Ted to sign.
Right, and
Ted
it was
loved
much
his
the
kid.
same with DiMaggio and that Ellsberg or whatever.
Well, that's true. That's true too. DiMaggio had a lawyer,
right?
Who
my brother worked in his office as a tax accountant.
Isn't that interesting? But he was a very jealous man and separated Joe from all of his friends. Barry Helper was one of Joe DiMaggio's closest friends, and that son of a bitch made up stories about Barry that caused Joe to stop seeing him anymore.
Oh, what's ironic is that Dominic DiMaggio became one of the most beloved people in Boston.
Well, Dominic DiMaggio
Dominic was a successful businessman.
He
retired after he decided that he wasn't going to sit on the bench in 1953 for the youth movement, and he was a very, very charitable, very involved with charitable foundations there.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. He had a loving family. He had a wonderful home. He had a great life.
And he was a damn good ball player who was very underrated.
Good ball player, no question. That's exactly.
And had he been in there instead of Culbertson, the Johnny Pesky, Enos Slaughter thing wouldn't have happened.
Yes.
But that's another story.
Culbertson's grandson is on the Dodgers.
If Roy Campanella had been catching Branca, you might not have had Bobby Thompson's home run. So who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
One more little piece of trivia for you, Al. Culbertson's dad was a minor league player with the Giants, and I don't think he ever made it to the majors. But
Culbertson on the Dodgers is a grand. I have a friend, Tom Zacco, who was a keeper of relatives. He knows all that. So when Culbertson came up, I called Tom. I asked him, is he related to Leon Culbertson? Yes, he's his grandson.
Wow.
So small world.
There you go.
There you go. And a good one. Thank you, guys. Great
Have
show.
a wonderful week. Take care.
Okay.
Next week with
too.
Tony Castro. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of it all.
Okay. Bye-bye.